Hello, friends, and welcome to the first full week of November. I hope life is treating you well. Today we're looking at another doctrinal mastery lesson. This one, Hebrews 12:9. You know the drill. There's three things we're going to do with every one of these lessons. We're going to spend a couple minutes, maybe 5, memorizing some references and key phrases. We're going to explain the doctrine, which is largely a review of the lesson yesterday and just practice talking about it. Maybe 10 minutes there, and then the bulk of the lesson we're going to spend on applying principles of acquiring spiritual knowledge in real-life circumstances. And so we're going to live on the edge, though. The teacher manual actually starts with explain, so we're going crazy. But as you can remember, everything in this lesson can be adapted to meet the needs of your students. So I'll give you an example of an adaptation that I'd maybe give with the explain here. So we're just looking to have students explain the truth found in Hebrews 12:9, and so here's what I might do with pairs. I might have pair students up and just have one student say, "Who are you?" Now their partner needs to answer using Hebrews 12:9. They could quote part of it or quote the whole thing, but they need to explain, "Who are you?" And then they're going to ask, why does that matter? This is where we get a little bit more to the explain what this means and what are the implications. And so I would do this twice, maybe. So one time you're the person asking the questions, and then one time you're the person answering the questions. And you could switch partners and do it again if you want. But what this does is get students using the doctrine in the verse, and then they're going to try to explain why does it matter. And hopefully in the practice, they learn something that's helpful. So that's what I do for the explain. Now, the memorize, a lot of times we have a similar idea and this just works. So I would recommend this. Putting the first letters on the board, H, F, I, T, F, O, S, and then students, Heavenly Father is Father of Spirits, Hebrews 12:9. You erase letters and rinse and repeat, and just have some fun with it. The caveat I would say that we sometimes forget to do is, remember, we want to review this tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Because if you do it, this will take under 60 seconds and most of your students will have it down. But will they be able to remember it 30 minutes from now? Probably, well, who knows? But plan on reviewing it the next day and the next day and the next day. Some teachers have found that just right beginning of class, before you even sing and pray or do anything else, just have it on the board and have students coming in, just have some fun with it. Say, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Let's just do it together, and then you start. So it's kind of a warm up and get people talking and alive. Then we've got the practice application. We're always going to review the principles of acquiring spiritual knowledge. I like this. This is a little bit different. We're just going to put 3 words on the board: faith, perspective, and sources, and ask students how those words relate to the 3 principles. So the review is getting them to think a little bit. You could choose different words if you want. Like you could put trust instead of faith. Instead of sources, you could put reading or resources or whatever. But what we're inviting students to do is to review in different ways throughout the year. Don't skip this, because students, if they can get this, this will be a blessing their whole lives, and it's going to take lots of repetition. So this is just a variety way to do that. I wouldn't adapt that much. Then finally, we have our real life scenarios. And so we're going to try to figure that out. There's a couple options here. One is kind of choose your own adventure, where you create a person and a situation, and they're thinking about it. And so students are coming up with scenarios. That's kind of fun. There are some challenges with that. We could waste a lot of time on this, and we could get distracted, and then we can actually come up with a scenario that's not overly helpful. And so if you think your class is ready to do this and do this well, that can be great. If not, I might choose one of the preloaded scenarios, or you make one of your own, but you see them at the bottom of the lesson, one about Susie and one about Amari. Those are quick. They're pretty good. You can adjust them if you want, but we can get into it a little bit quicker and make sure that we're more focused if we do that. But what we're doing with these scenarios, whether they choose their own adventure or use one of these two, is there's just a series of questions that I think are pretty good for students to discuss. You could do this in pairs. You can do this in groups of 3. Anytime we get a little bit over 3, it gets harder for students to really be involved. So I personally prefer 2 or 3, but that's just me. But you can say, here's the scenario. Would you review these questions together after that? I like to give a timer because it seems to get it going. So, okay, you've got 3 minutes. You've got to get through all these questions in 3 minutes. We don't want to be superficial, but we do want them to be focused. And you can wander the room and kind of listen as you go along. To be helpful, I made a little PDF of this activity so that you could hand it out to groups. It's going to be easier if they can see the questions and see the scenarios and review them together. And so that's found right here. You can see I just copied and pasted the scenarios from the lesson manual about Susie and Amari, or you can choose your own adventure. And you as a teacher, you can decide, are we going to do all 3 of these, or are we going to do? But if you go kind of quick and keep a good pace, I think students tend to do better. And so the discussion questions are down below. If there's groups of 3, you can say, Johnny's going to answer the examine questions, Susie's going to answer the seek, and Bob is going to answer the act. You can label these 1, 2, 3, or green, red, and purple, and you can switch and say different students have different responsibilities there. But this is provided as a resource if you'd like to use it to help you with this application time. At any rate, this looks like a great lesson. I think it'll be an enjoyable experience for your students. Thanks for what you do and who you are.